Every day is a new Holocaust, a new Groundhog Day of hell, and at least 30 people have been killed and many others injured in Israeli strikes on the two United Nations-run schools in the west of Gaza City. 80% of those killed and injured in the strikes on Sunday on the Hassan Salama and Al-Nasr schools were children. Normal Israeli Zionist procedure. So this is what we woke up to this Monday morning. Not a word in the Danish pro-Israeli media, which means all of them. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about art related to the Palestinian perspective and the role of art in conveying the Palestinian message. So, say welcome to Jacque Lauritsen. You are a theater director.
Yes.
And to Omar Al Sayed, you are a visual artist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you're a Palestinian.
I am Palestinian.
Can you introduce yourself a little bit? What is your perspective on, and also through the art according to the Palestinian situation?
Yes, you said I'm a theater director. I'm also an actor.
Mm-hmm.
And so for the last couple of years, I've been very engaged in doing performances relating to Palestine. Mm-hmm. First of all, there was a play about political prisoners in Israeli jails. And then it was followed up by some work for the Freedom Theater in Jenin on the West Bank. We did a show, we did a performance, a play done by them and performed it in Copenhagen. And then the latest thing is that I did a monologue as an actor about the Nakba. Mm-hmm. So what binds these things together for me is basically, I heard someone said, I don't remember exactly who, but he said that, well, the role of the theater is to break the dominant narrative and imagine a better future. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the overall context for this work I'm doing. Also, just to quote another one, Toni Morrison, the Afro-American writer, she said at a certain point, in dreadful times, artists cannot choose to remain silent. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's kind of the overall thing. But for me personally, it's I've been interested in Palestine for many years in other areas, and then I've looked for a way to use my work within theater in that context too, and so it has finally emerged and been realized. So been able to do that.
Omar, we met just a little bit brief before we were heading into the studio up in the cafe by chance, and you told me a little bit about that. You're originally from Lebanon. You met a Danish woman and you fell in love. You were working on a project together, and then you came here to Denmark.
True. So, as you mentioned briefly, I was born and raised actually in a refugee camp in southern Lebanon. Mm-hmm. It's 1.5 square kilometers. It's very small as it gets. Mm. So, as a refugee, was born and raised in a refugee camp in southern Lebanon. We were deprived from a lot of rights, and we had so many day-to-day problems that we wanted to shed light on and fix. And we had a lot of people in charge that didn't really take this seriously or didn't necessarily wanted to change the reality. So I was from youth groups around that time, and we had to do something ourselves. So we formed ourselves as a youth group to try to shed light on these problems, and sometimes even take to the streets and fix it ourselves with our hands. We're talking about small problems, sometimes fixing street, honestly. There's holes and nobody is honestly doing something about it. So we go and fix it ourselves, right? Along with these problems, there was so many other social issues and political issues. At that time, I was still young. I didn't understand a lot of it. I didn't understand the politics and all these kind of stuff, right? So, but I had the skills of drawing, of using some of my art to socially critique and shed light on something. Maybe didn't have the words for it, but I had the visuals for it. So I was using that type of art to shed light on it and try to create a public discourse among my people in that small camp to talk about this and to critique in a way. Yeah. Later on, I was taking bigger parts in different youth groups, and this is when I actually had a project funded by the Save the Children Youth Department, where I met now is my partner. And we worked together for a couple of years. Later on, things went beyond working, and we fell in love with each other.
Okay.
Took a long journey. We ended up here in Denmark.
So now you're here and you continued your visual artwork. in
One
Denmark.
part of what I do, exactly.
Okay. So one thing is using art to spread light about the Palestinian situation and message. But during the last 10 months of the genocide, do you feel any way that the way you see art related to Palestine and the ways it's being communicated, maybe also the way you're communicating it, or at least thinking about it, has it changed? Has it made your methods change in a way, also in the way you see the situation? Is it become more progressive, aggressive? I don't know, of course, how long you are in developing a new projects and so on, but at least the way your perspective is on the Palestinian art now.
For my part, it has not changed that much, really, because I mean, what I've been doing and what I'm planning to do now is not specifically related to Gaza. As I mentioned, it's been about prisoners, it's been about the Freedom Theater, and it's been about the Nakba. So it's not specifically related. But
I'm sorry, I'm interrupting. What I'm trying to get at is like, you don't feel like I think before the 7th of October, maybe you artists, even myself, I've done movies also about Palestine and so on, and the way it was, and also art with the Palestinian perspective was made, and it was, it was in a way that is trying to open people's eyes, in a way of also gathering people and so on, maybe more diplomatic. Don't you feel in a way today things have changed, that the same way of making art before, we cannot go back to that way, because
yeah, I understand that.
You know what I mean? Because
yeah, I know what you mean.
Because it's like all the curtains are down.
Yeah, sure.
So why should we try to talk from this diplomatic perspective that we're all one, and we just want peace and peace? Because if there's no peace at all, then
sure. But of course, it has many aspects, right? I think it's a very important thing to try to determine what is your aim, what is your goal with your art.
Yes.
And no matter how the situation is. So if you want to affect people and make them realize what is going on, what's been going on for many, many years, it's not necessarily a good idea to be aggressive. Or of course, I understand that and accept that the situation have changed a lot, but it's always been bad. So I think it's not about being diplomatic in the way, but it's more about, of course, you should be direct. This is what it's all about.
It's always been bad, but the Palestinians have not been in a situation before that they are on the edge of being annihilated.
Sure.
So it's always been bad. But now they are being annihilated. And maybe if the Israelis have it their way, in a couple of years, there won't be any Palestinians left. We have it some in the West, but there's no Palestine left.
Exactly. But it doesn't change the thing I was saying about who are you trying to reach with what you're doing.
Yeah.
And so it's always, I think, it's a matter of trying to define what is the best way to do it in order to achieve what you want to achieve. And it's not necessarily a more aggressive way. It could be a broad variety of methods or the way you're working.
But at least maybe to not be so afraid of making anybody angry. Because I think many people who've been involved with Palestinian art also before, they also had to think about, you don't want to go too hard on the Israelis, because then you're gonna get attacked from all sides, and nobody's gonna watch it. You're gonna be blamed for being an anti-Semite and so on. So you have to find a fine balance to come out with the message and not at the same time put yourself in a vulnerable situation where they can attack you. Don't you think today that the gloves are off and there's no? What do you think when you do your paintings and so on? And do you feel that? Do you feel any necessary to do? Do you think about? Are you scared of making anyone angry anymore? Or if you were before, I don't know.
So for me, it actually relies so much on who's the artist, what the type of art that's being doing, who am I talking to, and what am I talking about. If I'm talking with, if my audience are mostly the Palestinians, I will be, and I used to do that, I will be talking or creating the type of art that motivates Palestinians to resist and to keep going with the resistance and the resilience. Right now, who am I talking to are the Western communities, the people who have to see the struggle as a human struggle. Because to be honest, the information is there, is out there. A lot of information from NGOs reports to news to politics to Human Rights Watch writing report after report about the violation of international laws and the human rights of the Palestinians. But that changes nothing. We're still seeing a lot of international laws violations, of human rights violations, and it's just exposing these, but with no countries and those people in power taking any actions towards them. So I started to think about, okay, what direction I could take with the art that I'm doing, and I can do. This is what I can do. What direction I can take to humanize the story as much as I can. Take it out of context of the political jargon and these phrases of who has the right, who doesn't have the right, what is acceptable international laws, what's not acceptable, and focus on the human story, on that person who's passing.
But this human story, does it help? Does it shift any opinions towards the Palestinian situation to keep trying to talk from a diplomatic, from a humanistic point of view? Or don't you just speak into a closed segment that already agrees with the Palestinians?
But that's how you address things. And it's very important what you say about the human dimension of art anyhow, what kind of art we're talking about, that somehow it reflects, the small stories, if you can call it that, reflect the bigger picture. So the thing is also to make, we are focusing on the small stories, the personal stories, but to relate them to the bigger picture so people will understand this. And when you say about this, it doesn't matter at all. We have this, this expression about singing for the choir. It's only, talking to people who agree with you beforehand. And that's fine. But of course, in my work, I surely would like to have all the people to see it who is not that clear about where they stand. And surely this situation now, as dreadful and terrible as it is, actually give better conditions for that. Because people are so much aware about, okay, there's something going on in Palestine.
So there's a new audience that's open for who. Yeah. Do you feel that with your work?
It's not about feelings. It's just like when I did these performances at the theater. It's obvious. Of course, there are many people there among the audience who are like you and me and us here, but there are also people, and I know that from the discussions afterwards. We have some meeting the audience situations, arrangements, and so people also come. People who are not that clear about where they stand. And that's what it's all about, because of course it's them I want to attract mostly of all. So it's about, the discussion about can art change the world? No, art cannot change the world in itself, but it's part of a number of things that can. So in order to, in first place to make people realize these things are actually going on, and then to hopefully make them act upon it. So these performances I've been doing is very concrete. It's documentary drama. And talking about the audience, I've heard various people say, of course, for example, about the prisoners in Israeli jails. Well, I imagined it was tough, but I didn't know it was that tough. I didn't know it was that extreme. And so in that way, I think it's definitely possible to make affect people's minds about these things.
Yes. Can I add also, one thing is, how do we look at art and how do we use it in our cause as well? It should be part of the puzzle. It's just one piece of the puzzle. It's not the only thing that will change people's opinion.
Mm.
First of all, it comes as complementary to many other things. But if you are not willing to change, if you're not willing to listen, if you're not willing to open your mind and look at different narratives and different perspectives, nothing in the world gonna change your mind. And that's from an experience that when I started, when my illustrations and the work that I'm doing and what I can do started to reach different um, perspectives and opinions. For example, pro-Israelis and Israelis themselves as well. They were commenting and they were reaching out and they're trying to denounce and point out that what I'm doing is not good and it's not true. In a way, they've seen the art. Doesn't mean that they haven't seen it. They've seen the information that I put there. They've seen exactly like any other person have seen it. And some people have emotionally engaged with what I'm doing, and that pushed them to take an action. But for some reason, there are some people, pro-Israelis, that they've seen this and they actually talked to me and they were like, no, this is not true. You are the terrorist. So you are Hamas supporters. So you are this and this and this, right? So they've got their narratives and they are not willing to change. So for you to change and to use art to change, you really need to be willing from inside also to look at things from, in a way that, okay, what's the different reality? Because for them this is real also, right? So what's the different reality? And what art can bring is what politics cannot bring. It can engage you emotionally. Politics cannot change you emotionally. When you listen to a song, when you listen to a poem, when you see an art, when you see a theater play, when you see this, you are engaging emotionally with this situation. You are seeing a human aspect of it. And that makes you understand the story. But if you ask me, I would love to think that my art is changing actually, and bringing this and preaching the choir and stuff like that. I would love to believe this, but I'm also being so realistic to think about, okay, what can I do right now? I ask myself, what can I do? This is what I can do. And then I ask myself, did I do everything I can to advocate and to raise awareness and to talk about Palestine? Then I use the art that I'm doing as a medium to speak up in a way.
And about this doing everything we can. We're in a situation today. We've been we talked a little bit about it at the cafe upstairs. For the last 10 months, especially for the last 10 months. Yeah, of course, many people have been working for the Palestinian cause before. Also, I did movies, documentaries, and so on about the Palestinian situation. Many artists around the world, in their different ways, try to make awareness of the Palestinian situation. Now, especially after 10 months, also we've been doing, for example, this podcast program for the last 10 months. Thousands of people around the world have been going to the street. Millions of people are going to the street and so on. And a lot of clever people, all from academics and to the normal guy on the street, have been trying from a logical point of view to convince politicians, the media, and the broader publics around the world about what's happening in Palestine from a humanistic point of view, from a logical point of view. But it came to a point, everything has become worse. Everything has become worse. More and more people dying, and it becomes more and more evil. It's like if you thought you reached the limits of evil, the Israelis will find a new way to surprise you the next day. So nothing has helped. Logic, humanistic, academic talks, nothing helps. Political, nothing helps. Even international law is that there's one new resolution from the highest international courts. They're coming monthly, but nothing helps. So logic and trying to talk to people's minds, their hearts, it seems like nothing helps. So is there any other way than bringing down the Israeli Zionist regime and also the ones behind them than military resistance and war? Is there any other solutions than war? So I came personally to this perspective. I don't know. I really cannot see what's gonna bring this situation to how to say it, to a place where the annihilation of the Palestinians will end, except war. And bringing art into that perspective, I don't know if you agree with me, but do you as an artist at the same time maybe also have a response if you come to the same conclusion that war is the only solution? How isn't the art also, doesn't it have a responsibility, and isn't art also then a tool to open people's minds of that war is the only solution, or at least prepare them for when the war is coming, that they're fighting for a higher cause? So isn't art also has a responsibility in the revolution and in the Intifada and the resistance? So just because it's not just about anymore it's not about just trying to open people's eyes, from a humanistic perspective and so on. So, but actually is, so art can also be, let's put it down as it is, propaganda for resistance war.
But then again, I would say it depends very much on where you are and what your possibilities are. I mean, I don't see myself taking up arms in Denmark. It's not my job. But I can relate very strongly to the Freedom Theater in Jenin in the West Bank, who's been attacked numerous times, and their whole existence is about, it is a form of resistance in their own way of expressing what's the idea of our work. This is part of the resistance through art and not through armed struggle. I mean, other people engage in that. They, as a theater, engage in the artistic way. But that's their situation. In working here in Denmark, you could also see this, what we are doing, as part of a resistance movement towards how things are. But again, what you have to really be clear about what your aim is. I mean, what can you affect? And I don't think that, as you said before, Omar, about art can go beyond political statements. Art can go beyond slogans and very maybe one-dimensional thoughts. So I think if we chose to go into the propaganda department, it would approach more these statements that we have loads of, and of course it's good they are there. They have to be there. We have to do something else, because that
when you say we, what do you mean we?
When I say we, I mean artists in Denmark.
Artists in Denmark. So you don't think that artists in Denmark should make art that advocates for armed resistance?
You can do that, but again, you have to define what you want to achieve. If the only effect you have by doing propaganda style.
No, but when I say armed resistance, for example,
yeah,
I also mean what I think most Palestinians believe, that armed resistance is the same as survival. Yeah. You're not talking about armed resistance in the sense of making war. Armed resistance may be the only way of survival. So when we're talking about armed resistance, and if you can come to the term that you agree with, that armed resistance is the same as survival, wouldn't art also just be, if you're advocating for armed resistance, you're actually just advocating for survival of the Palestinian people?
But armed resistance in Palestine is not new, of course. I mean, it's been there for decades.
No, but I mean, one thing is that there's armed resistance there. But if more and more people agree with this is the only way that people that the Palestinians will survive, and also with help from outside. When I'm talking about armed resistance, that's just from the Palestinians themselves. I'm also talking about the ones around them that helps them in the armed resistance, because nothing else helps. No logic, no politics, no laws. So is there any other way than armed resistance? If you come to this point, to this conclusion, I mean, this is also something you have to put in the art, isn't it? Then it's not about just painting a picture with a Jewish kid and a Palestinian kid holding hands and planting an olive tree together. I don't
think that's what we're doing.
No, I'm saying, but we are beyond it. So we are beyond this point.
Yeah.
Of course we
are beyond this.
What I wanted to say is, like, to break that down in a way, armed resistance and armed conflict and the freedom fighters in Palestine, they are perceived as terrorists in the West. To break that down, to change the narrative of these freedom fighters are not terrorists, but freedom fighters, you need different means to explain the context of why these people chose to fight, first of all. Like if you hold a bird, small little bird, and just squeeze as much as you can, even the bird will bite at some point. They can't take it anymore. They will bite. So there is no way to unjustify that armed resistance is a way of resistance or not. If is it eligible or not? I personally agree that you need to use any means of resistance when your life is at stake, and if that's the only way to survive. But in a way to also, break down that narrative and change the narrative that will bring support for the Palestinians to end the apartheid state and to live in a free Palestine, what we all wanted, is you need all types of arts and speeches and motivational speeches and conversations with people to change the narrative. Look, this narrative of dehumanizing Palestinians, calling them Arab in the first place, not Palestinians, and forming this shape of the Arab identity, that it is like this, that's why Europe is like this, the Orientalism, and what Edward Said talked about all along. They used the theater, they used books, they used poems, they used billions of dollars in movies and Hollywood to shape this Arab identity is like this, and it looks like that. And we are doing this because they are like that, right? Okay, we need to combat that narrative. We need to create a different type of propaganda, which is not propaganda, is the reality which is sad reality, that we have to convince the people that Palestinians are human and that we have to, live as everyone else living and be able to grow up as a child and become the dream that once they dream. But that's the sad reality, but the work needs to be done in there. So you've got the type of art that will motivate the resistance and the freedom fighters to go on and fight more and do that. But you've got also the type of art that will break that down and will explain for the people why these people have the right to resist, why these people need to fight and need to resist, why they shouldn't be called as terrorists. Who are you to tell me who's terrorist and not? Why it's always you that so in that sense, keeping the status quo, it's easy for the West. It doesn't cost much. It gives them the interest that they want. But we want to break that status quo. And how do you get to the people's mind? Because one of the way is, let's be realistic. People of Denmark is not going to just go get weapons right now and march to Palestine and attack Israel, right? But what you can do is you can disrupt their ideas internally. When you talk to the people of Denmark and explain to them what's actually happening in Palestine is against all human rights, against all violation. I know we're tired of using logic. I know we are tired talking about international laws and pointing out how many of them have been broken by bombing schools, universities, hospitals, and all of that. But we need to look at the alternative. What do we do if we don't do that, right?
No, just to make a comment about that. Again, as you say, it's all about changing narratives. And so also relating to the discussion about this didn't start in October, as quite a lot of people think. So going back to say, okay, where is this based? What is this based upon? How did it start? And just to give that concrete example, when I did this monologue about the Nakba, I mean, it's a story written by an Israeli soldier and his experiences in how to, he was a part of a group, a military group that had to go into a village and, erase them from the grounds and burn the shit down, everything. Terrible. And he realized during that day in this fiction that okay, what am I doing here? I mean, we are doing to the Palestinians exactly or somehow what other people have been doing to us. So this thing to have an Israeli soldier story giving these facts to understand, okay, first of all, this did not start in October last year, but also because it's the story of an Israeli soldier. That makes it possible to reach a new audience who is more, listen more to this. I'm not saying we shouldn't hear the Palestinians.
But isn't that the problem?
What?
That you need to make a story from an Israeli point of view to make people listen and watch it. This is the problem.
It is. I'm totally agree with you. It is a problem, but it's maybe, whether we like it or not, unfortunately also a fact.
Shouldn't we insist on making it public? Because I think And there's so many. This is when it's like when we see American movies about Vietnam, and so it's always from the white guy's perspective. It's so hard to be a butcher. It's so hard to be a killer. I have nightmares, and all the people that I killed. This is the same story. It's the white man's story always. We always see it from the white man's perspective and I think this is a part of the problem. Instead of insisting of making it from the Palestinian or the black man perspective, insisting we continue to make it eatable. So the white man, the white woman can identify.
But Omar,
because they identify, they rather want to identify with the killer because they share the same skin color than the victims. I think it's a problem.
But it is a problem, but it's not a question about one way or the other. It's like you say that you exclude the other thing if you do one thing. That's not what I'm advocating. Of course, the Palestinian voices should be heard as much as possible. What I'm only saying here is that if I can, if I can affect the audience in a theater with this specific performance 10 times more by using a Jewish voice to make them understand what happened in 48, I will gladly do that.
But did you with this when you did a theater like this from the Israeli perspective, even though it's an Israeli feeling bad for what he did? Did you change the perspective and humanizing the Palestinian more, or did you just show again that the white man, he has feelings even when he's a killer?
I can't. Of course, I don't know exactly what were in people's minds. I can only react on what they said, and maybe that's not how they feel. I don't know, but to a certain extent, yes, I think it changed something really, But again, it's not, this is the way to do it. I mean, the other thing I'm doing is not about Israeli voices at all, or Jewish voices. It's about, the Freedom Theater in Jenin. It's Palestinian voices, all kinds of, Palestinian artists to make their stories known in Denmark. So it's not a question of one way or the other.
Because for example, I remember this, there was after the Lebanon massacre, also the Israeli-Lebanon massacre in 2006, there was this very famous, I remember it won a lot of prizes. I remember I had my debut film came out the same year, and it was going to many of the same festivals. And this it was called Waltzing with Bashir. It was an animated movie also about Israeli soldiers, how tough it was to be a killer in Lebanon. But again, I think it does not. Movies like that does not end the occupation, does not end the Israeli regime. Actually, it justifies it, because many people with an open mind, liberals, humanistic people who consider themselves humanistic, they say, yeah, okay, nice, yeah, we understand war is bad, but it justifies the occupation because it shows the Israelis from a humanistic point of view, and we're not. I believe we're not there. We're actually there when, for example, when the West did the movies about the Nazis, you never saw a Nazi who also was a humanist. Or he also had a human side. All the Nazis, they're very, they're always like this very caricated, what's it called?
Caricature.
Yeah, caricature. Yeah. And you never see from a human perspective.
But should we duplicate that?
I think we are at a point where 85% of the Israeli population, they believe that Netanyahu is not doing enough in Gaza. So they have a mass psychosis. All of a sudden, we should dehumanize Israelis, but we should show right now what's happening. And most of the Israelis, they are behind the genocide, and it's definitely not the time to make more movies about it's hard to be Israeli soldier, it's hard to kill children, it's hard to rape women. I feel bad after I came back from Gaza, and I start to feel bad about all the women I killed, all the children I killed, and so on. So this is not the time. We have to show right now how horrible it is what's happening. And it's only from one perspective. This is the Palestinian perspective. If you want to put some Israelis in the story, you have to show what they're doing, not about they're having nightmares about what they're doing afterwards. This is not the time for that, I believe.
But what I wanted to say is also it's not one part of the story only, because the life of Palestinians in occupied Palestine, in Gaza, and in the 1948 land as well, it's heavily relying on how is the Israeli regime acts, right? And how it is also objecting the lifestyle on it as well. So sadly, the reality, if you only talk from Palestinian side, which is important to always bring up the stories, it's been always denounced and called propaganda and called lying. But when you hear soldiers from Breaking the Silence organization, for example, those ex-soldiers who left the army because of the horrible things they had to do in the army, and they spoke against it. Sadly, it's actually being heard much, much more than the stories. So it's not about where to focus only on this or only on that. Again, it's piece of the puzzle.
But this is
You've got
but what you're talking about now is what we get in from the news and the social media. I'm talking about the responsibility, I think, mainly through the art. And I think it's fine. Of course, we need all these stories about also the Israeli soldiers and the breaking the silence and so on, and all the professors and academics with a Jewish background who supports Palestine and so we need all this stuff. But at the end of the day, I'm talking from an artistic point of view, especially you with the Palestinian background, and I don't think we need more movies and more stories and more books or more paintings about how hard it is to be a butcher, how hard it is to be an Israeli soldier. I think we have a responsibility to insist of showing it from the Palestinian perspective. We're going to spend 5 years on a movie or writing a book or whatever. We have to insist on telling the Palestinian stories and to break down this part of the wall you can to humanize the Palestinians. I know a big part of the world, they'll never open their eyes. So you cannot save the whole world. You cannot open everybody's because they're so deeply in this racist mentality, the white man's racist mentality, and a lot of brown people also racist towards the Palestinians. You can never fix that. But you can fix it to a certain point. That, I think, then the true Palestinian liberation will be accepted as by as many people it is needed to make the liberation possible. And it's not about liberation. Huh?
How do you do that?
I believe, unfortunately, there's only one way left, and it's by force. You see a guy like Netanyahu. You saw him in the Congress the other day. He's like Hitler.
Okay.
It's like
Can
Hitler.
I- but-
It was pure. He was a bad actor. You're a theater director. You could see how bad actor he was.
Yeah.
And still, you have a guy, and he was even promoting even more war. He wants to have more war. It was like when Hitler, he wanted to make war with the whole
But you
world.
don't have to convince us about that. I think
No.
we know that.
My point is, when you have a world supporting this, there's only one way left.
But how do you change the people supporting that? Because even if you want to do it with power and with force, and which I totally agree with, this needs to be dismantled. The apartheid state needs to be dismantled, and people have to live freely in Palestine and get equal rights. I totally agree with that. And we have as much as we can to focus on stories from Palestinians. How do they live day by day? It breaks down this genocide. It breaks down this apartheid system into information that's easily to grasp and emotionally engaging so the people can listen. And I would say that since October 7, we've seen millions, and you mentioned millions of people went on the street, right? And there was this momentum. We didn't see these people before. That means we have reached to a bigger audience that maybe they were on the fence between who to support. A lot of people even didn't know, like they just knew that, oh, Palestine, Israel, come on, guys, just agree on a little bit of land. But it actually made people to research. I mean, I've got a lot of people writing to me and saying also that, sorry, we didn't know this has been happening for 75 years. It's like, all right, what are you going to do about it? It's like, okay, we're going to take to the streets. We're going to do this. What scares me the most, Omar, is we've got this momentum right now. And a lot of people taking to the street, a lot of people demonstrating, a lot of people knowing more and more. How do we sustain this? This is what I asked myself, and I wanted to focus my art on when I'm thinking of an artistic way to advocate for Palestine. How can I sustain this? Right now we have this momentum, and the people are emotionally charged and emotionally, so frustrated and so angry. All of us so angry. Like I've heard a lot of people telling me, like, can't we just form an army and go attack Israel? Honestly, because they are so frustrated. But there is this momentum right now because we're seeing this live stream. What do we do afterwards? Tomorrow ceasefire happens, okay? Let's say that, and the Palestinians started to rebuild Gaza and hospitals started to work again, but the siege is still there, the apartheid is still there. How do we sustain that the people still knows this? How do we sustain that they are emotionally still connected and charged as they were charged in the genocide
I think,
to keep fighting and to keep
I think Israel is going to help a lot in this part because they're not satisfied only with smashing Gaza into pieces. They want to continue the war. They want to continue with Iran, Lebanon. So because we have a new Hitler there in Israel. So I think
one thing, Omar, is also not to put it all on Netanyahu, because Netanyahu,
No, no, of course
because
not, of
even
course
before
not.
Netanyahu comes, it was like
I
this.
was,
It's
I
a
was,
whole system,
I
right?
was thinking like the same for a long time. How are we going to keep up the spirit? How are we going to keep the spirit to continue the
How?
struggle? Yes, but I must say right now, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. One thing I believe is the war is going to continue, and it's going to be wider, and it's going to be bigger, and we haven't seen the last of it. And it's going to be like we had so many big wars in history, and this is one of them. This is not something that's over tomorrow or in 1 month. This is going to continue. This is Gaza is just the beginning, unfortunately, and it will end at some point. It's going to end with the fall of Israel. I don't know how many years, but of course it will. We'll have half a billion Arabs around Israel. They're not gonna stay there forever. At some point, United States are gonna lose their power, or they're gonna have enough of Israel. They say we cannot continue to support Israel. It's bad for business. It's bad for American interests, and they're gonna pull the plug. One of those scenarios could happen. One thing is for sure: Israel is not gonna be there forever. Of course not. This is the beginning of the end. How long the end is gonna take, we'll see. But it's the beginning of the end. This thing I'm positive about.
Yeah, there is no empire
And we
stays
and we
forever.
continue to make the art. I hope to make this end come as quick as possible.
Yeah.
But I don't think we disagree about this kind of, as I told you earlier on, this thing about imagining a better future, and not only. I mean, it's very complex, and it's just what I'm saying. I think you're saying also, but you must correct me, is that it's not a one-way street, or it's not a one mean direction. I mean, it's like you say, it's a puzzle, and all the small pieces or bigger pieces are important in that puzzle. And what we can do is, of course, different from what they do in Palestine or Lebanon, but still, it's all the things working together. I still believe is important. Also, even though I agree with you about this is not the time to hear sad stories about murderers. I agree with you, but also to listen to anti-Zionist Jewish voices. And I give you one example. To one of the things I did was we made this play about the prisoners, and that play was done by a woman named Einet Weizmann, who is an anti-Zionist Jew, together with former prisoners in Israeli jails. So, and this gave a lot of interest in what is going on. Is there really a Jew who did this together with these Palestinians? So, and it's not the only way. But again, it's not about one thing. It's about many things. And I think we should always, all the time, have the objective. The liberation of Palestine, of course, is the top of the bill. But I don't think, even though how terrible and how horrible the situation is now, that going out and say, okay, we in our ways of art doing propaganda for armed struggle, period. I mean, I don't think that would be helpful, and I think art can do something that other things can't, and that's what we should use. That's what we should develop. We have loads of other spheres and people, organizations who are doing other stuff.
No, but I mean also with this art, when I say, for example, art clearing the way for armed struggle, not just to make war. You tell the humanistic stories on the way. You have the good art does many things. It doesn't just do one thing, because then it's just pure propaganda. Good art does many things. It works on different levels, also in the humanistic levels, telling the personal stories, breaking down the walls of racism, and so on, so on, so on, and portraying, for example, in this case, Palestinians as human beings. And I think this is the most difficult thing to do. I think it's even more difficult than advocating for war, for armed struggle. I think is to make people realize that the Palestinian life is just as much worth as any other life. This is the most difficult thing to do. And this is really good art if you can do that, and at the same time justify that armed resistance is the only way to keep the Palestinians alive, and at the same time tell a beautiful story that portrays Palestinians and human beings, and you will wake up the next day, you will not have one. Yani, you took the worst racism and make it into a humanist. Of course, then you made you make the perfect art. I think this is the most difficult thing to do.
Look,
So,
I mean, many times I woke up and I asked myself, like, what am I doing? Is actually doing any change? You know, like I goes up and down on the hope. Sometimes I woke up really hopeful and I say that it's really changing something. We are going maybe inching our ways toward liberation little by little, you know, and I put that hope so I can continue and go on. And one day I wake up, man, like, can't lie to you, I will be completely honest, completely pessimistic and saying that nothing gonna change. There is a lot of people in power already there and they had to resign because they couldn't change anything. And that made them felt like so powerless to change something. But then, you know, like, I ask myself, what's the alternative then? Okay, like, shall I just give up and sit and do nothing? Or shall I just keep doing what I can do? And of everything I can do, right? And, you know, like somebody says that art makes revolution irresistible in a way. So it's always there. It's always something that will live forever and will combat some sort of propaganda and create new discourse. Sadly, this discourse, one of them is to convince some people that Palestinians are human and children deserve to live in a way.
One thing I'm sure about is that it's very, these days you have become completely disillusioned. Also in this country we live in, I believe, and being a Danish Palestinian citizen, I feel let down by the politicians, the systems, the media. I never felt so much as a stranger in my own country as I do now, like almost a drifter. And only feel home together with the people I know that share my point of views, especially on the Palestinian matter, my family, even friends. Only the only friends I can be with are the ones sharing my point of views on a general basis about Palestine. The other friends, I don't have them in my life anymore. And I think as an artist, I think we have this advantage, not feeling home anywhere else. And you most especially know as well, you came from Lebanon, you're Palestinian, now you're stuck in Denmark. You have your family, alhamdulillah, but still, in this situation these days, I think one of the places where you can still feel some kind of home is in the art. And sometimes it's an escape and so on. It is an escape. You can disappear in this other dimension where that art is as well, and try to get the best out of it here, because right now it's not, this world we're living in now is not always the best place to be. Yeah. With that, I'm gonna say thank you very much for coming, both of you.
Thank you.
So I hope it didn't scare you away with. But these are tense days, you know. Yeah. So
True.
Yeah.
You can't run into cellar.
No, it's not. It's not time for small, easy, nice, soft talks. And I think we have to express ourselves, especially what we feel these days, not just what we're thinking, also what we feel.
True. Yeah, we're all frustrated. We're all so angry on this.
Yes. Thank you. So
thank you.
It's important. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. President, we've known each other for 40 years, and you've known every Israeli prime minister for 50 years, from Golda Meir. So from a proud Jewish Zionist to a proud Irish-American Zionist, I want to thank you for 50 years of public service and 50 years of support for the State of Israel. And I look forward to discussing with you today and working with you in the months ahead on the great issues before us.